Now, I will apologise in advance. It was supposed to be my colleague Richard Collins speaking today, but Richard has run off into the Tasmanian wilderness and left me to take over his duties. So please bear with me, thank you, and apologise in advance. So my name is Tanya Rajaratnam. I would like to just start by, I know Lachlan did do an acknowledgement of country, but I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on right now, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So I guess I was asked to speak about the role of local government in helping to facilitate the delivery of waste infrastructure in general. So obviously it's a critical role, and I guess I am partly, there's a big focus I suppose on local government in metropolitan areas, but it's not necessarily the case. Obviously regional councils are more often involved in running their own waste infrastructure, but sometimes there is a move away and there is a need for developing new infrastructure to consolidate small landfills into larger, better performing landfills, and so this can be applicable across different types of infrastructure, from landfill through to recovery and energy recovery infrastructure. Now, before I go on, I suppose I'm interested to know how many local government people do we have here, either in the local government sector? Oh, okay, so and how many in sort of other government agencies? A few, okay. And private sector, we got any private sector people? Yeah, okay, all right, okay. Good mix, good mix. So I guess I just wanted to start with some context. I'm not going to go through it all. Obviously, Joe Pickin this morning went through the latest national waste data, so you can blame him. But just to put it in context, that local government does control a lot of the supply of waste that's generated nationally, and at least a fifth of the waste. Total waste generation is municipal waste, and obviously there is also some councils involved in managing C&I and C&D waste streams as well, but certainly municipal waste is supplied by local governments. So that's what we're talking about. So I guess wanted to start with why. I think back when I first started in this industry, particularly in Sydney, we still had the state government companies supplying a lot of the waste infrastructure, and I think that that situation has obviously changed over time, and local governments, particularly in metropolitan areas or more urbanised areas, I suppose, have moved away from actually developing their own infrastructure. So, more and more there is a need for having a strong rationale for being involved in that development process, rather than just leaving it to the private sector. So I think the crucial rationale really is the urgency of running out of landfill space. I think it's generally unlikely that councils will be developing new infrastructure, and particularly recovery infrastructure, when they have 50 years plus of landfill life left. That's just not a good enough driver. And there are exceptions to that, and I would say possibly Lake Macquarie Council, for example, which has quite a long landfill life remaining, but are still very strong proponents of energy from waste infrastructure. So there are exceptions, but I think that urgency of running out of landfill space is a big driver. I guess the market and the operation of the market is the other big driver, and I guess that's, I think, where local government really needs to ensure that that's, you know, if there's a reason to get into facilitating development of waste infrastructure, then it's where there is a need to address that dysfunction in the market. So where there's not enough competition or just not enough choice in suppliers. I think, you know, there's also a big argument for councils being involved when they control the supply of land in many cases, so they have access to land, and they may have you know, access to land that can be acquired easily. So I think the cost of land in particularly in urban areas is a big factor. But I guess it's, you know, it's often comes down to having that appetite either within the community or within the council to find solutions. But yeah, but I guess just recognising that councils, you know, do really control a large supply of both the waste but also often the land. But I guess, you know, there are some very significant barriers to local government being involved in developing waste infrastructure, and so I wanted to start with these because they are significant. So I think one of the really big ones is you know, the level of risk appetite in the councils, and you know, many councils are quite risk averse, and that really does inhibit the ability to be involved in facilitating infrastructure development. I think the other big issue is that waste infrastructure is not core business for councils. And I think, you know, that particularly in New South Wales, that is a major issue in, you know, that the actual collection of waste is an essential service, but the provision of somewhere for that waste to go is not. And that becomes a crucial issue that, you know, that councils have struggled to overcome. I think that, you know, another issue that isn't recognised enough, I suppose, is the need for specialist skills in not only the development, I guess the ability to deliver infrastructure, but also, you know, in operations, because a lot of times councils will have a need to operate themselves because it's more cost efficient. But there's, you know, there is a need for more capacity building in local government, particularly in regional locations where it really is difficult to bring in, you know, and to retain staff with the right skills. I guess, you know, some of the other, you know, crucial issues are obviously the need for scale, and, you know, it has been mentioned many times already today, the issues of, you know, policy and regulatory uncertainty, and obviously, you know, market fluctuations and market uncertainty. Those things can't be, you know, overstated. They are a big issue to overcome. There are inherent challenges in collaborating, you know, so on big infrastructure projects where multiple councils need to collaborate together. Obviously, that is challenging to you know, work together with other organisations. I think that you know, the approvals process is also something that is a big inhibitor for a lot of councils, and that you know, they need urgent solutions, and the approvals process is really getting in the way of finding those solutions. The availability of sites is obviously, you know, particularly in the metropolitan context, is an issue. And I think something that really isn't focused on enough is, you know, that issue of social licence. I know that it has been mentioned already earlier, but that, you know, we just don't have the right level of support from the community for the right solutions, and I think that's something that we could all work together on. So let's move on to the more positive things that councils can do. I think, you know, we need to recognise that those barriers are significant, and a lot of them are things that councils don't have any control over, or don't have very limited control over. But I guess there are, many things that can be done to counteract, I suppose. I think one of the most important things is having decisive local and regional strategies and targets. And I will say that that's not just about, recovery rates and diversion. I think it's been talked about already, today, that driving the market for recycled products is also a responsibility of local governments. And I think that, if we're really going to drive circular solutions, then, local governments need to be making those commitments both to the recovery and to, buying back and increasing the demand for recycled products. And so, having that, I guess, having that foundation with long-term commitment is crucial to being able to get a council across the line in, facilitating development of infrastructure. I think service harmonisation is something that council's grown at, but it is something that can help to at least improve efficiencies in the process. And certainly, if councils, when different parties are working together, if there is an ability to harmonise the services and collection systems that are available, certainly that helps to make a more attractive investment opportunity, and it certainly is a good way of proving the ability of getting agreement on those sorts of things in the beginning is a good way of proving that those parties can work together for solutions. So I think that's something, worth considering before going down that path. I think, developing robust strategic business cases is crucial, and I will talk about that in a minute. I think that, industry, consulting with industry is also a really crucial factor, and I think it's a responsibility of the private sector and councils to be talking and to be sharing information because that is crucial to understanding where the market's at, understanding the technologies available, the interest in the market, and importantly, what level of risk allocation, and risk sharing is going to be required in order to get something across the line. And having that knowledge, up front, having early engagement is crucial in understanding that process. I think that, I know there's another session on local government procurement, but I guess it's, important that tenders are agnostic to technology, sometimes even agnostic to location of facilities, so that, I guess it allows flexibility in the industry to respond to, appetite for risk and different contract conditions. And I guess the other one that I think is, addressing the issue of social licence is, it's crucial for local governments to be engaging effectively with their communities from an early stage. So, building that local support for the solutions, building trust in the local government as a decision maker on their behalf, I think is really important in building social licence over the long term for the right solutions and fit for purpose solutions. So I guess I just wanted to, look, this is very detailed. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but, just going along with strategic business cases, I think are a crucial tool that councils really should be using in any kind of decision-making process around future, waste solutions. And I guess just, this is adapted from the New South Wales Government Business Case Guidelines, which, really breaks it down into 4 key aspects, and that is, establishing the case for change is a really crucial thing up front, and making sure that, you know, the problem is articulated, that there is a clear need for intervention, that you understand stakeholder needs, and that it's, you know, in alignment with government priorities, and really setting the base case against which, you know, you'll assess the options. Cost-benefit analysis obviously is important to look at the greater benefits to society and looking at, you know, a lot of those non-monetary impacts and benefits, and comparing, you know, those between options. Obviously, affordability is a crucial component, and so, you know, financial analysis, understanding whole of life costs, and also, I think, you know, really importantly, understanding what are the uncertainties. What don't we know? What don't we, and what are the sensitivities? What happens if our assumptions are not correct? How much impact will that have on the outcome? And also understanding, you know, crucial timelines and, you know, the possibility of staging things over time. And I think the other, you know, crucial element is understanding the deliverability. So, you know, it's, do we have the skills and resources available? Do we understand the market capacity and capability? And have we looked at, you know, the potential commercial models that could be suitable? Do we have a way of actually evaluating whether this is the right solution, and, you know, whether it's the performance is there? And I think something that's also really crucially needs to be taken into consideration at this early stage too is, you know, the resilience of the potential options to shocks and stresses. So things like natural disasters, you know, collapse in the market. So unexpected things that could happen along the way. Look, there are many different, I mean, I could go into huge detail, but this is just one example, I suppose, of a decision pathway that councils could use. It's not the only way that decisions can be made, but, you know, it is, I suppose, really important to start with having a case for change, having that, you know, that sound basis of a strategic business case. Up front, I think, you know, really crucially is there a location available that really, you know, is one thing that should direct, you know, where the council is going next. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a council-owned site. There may be another site that could be acquired. There may be opportunity for partnering with a site owner, but I guess that's a big decision at the front. And then it's a, you know, a decision about how involved does the council want to be. And so I guess, you know, it could be anything from no involvement in operations, so potentially leasing a site, for example, right through to, you know, actually being involved in the design and construction and operation. I guess then it's also a decision about scale and whether you need to partner. Do you have enough scale on your own, or do you need to build scale by joining with another party? And so that's where, you know, I guess obviously you need to decide which parties are going to be involved. And so then if it's a joint party, if it's a joint collaboration, then there's a decision to be made around, you know, what type of entity structure is most suitable to this particular proposal. So, you know, from joint venture to special purpose vehicle to, you know, lead council alliance, you know, MOU, and I guess, you know, there's varying degrees of risk in those different models, but also, you know, complexity, sort of weighing up risk and complexity. So I think, you know, at that point you can decide whether or not to proceed, but I think it's important too to remember that if the decision, you know, if that doesn't come to fruition and if there isn't agreement between all the parties, then, you know, it's not necessarily the end of the line, and that's where you can go back and revise the business case. So just a very quick example, I guess, of a project which I wasn't personally involved in, but my colleagues in Melbourne had some involvement in this particular example of councils working together and developing so establishing a special purpose vehicle, a separate entity in order for a specific purpose, and the purpose of that entity is to produce an advanced waste processing option for the councils, and so I guess it has ended up with at the end of last year, middle of last year, a waste supply agreement with the Maryvale Energy from Waste facility, which hopefully will all come to fruition. So there's 9 councils involved from the southeast Melbourne region. I guess the main thing to keep in mind here is the length of time that it can take for a group of councils. So it actually started back in 2019. There were 16 councils from the Metropolitan Melbourne Resource Recovery Group involved, and things evolved over time to now 9 councils joining that waste, that special purpose vehicle and that waste supply agreement. So over an almost 6-year period, quite a lot of things changed along the way, including at one stage it was there was a potential site available, and evolved into being just a sort of third-party services contract between the special purpose vehicle and the facility. So a long process, and things can change along the way, but ultimately the key drivers being lack of landfill, not many other options, and but also community opposition to landfill, I think, was a big factor in being able to push through that particular project. So I guess almost at the end, joint procurement, I guess some of the the features of good joint procurements can be considered. So, having a good track record of working together, having a clear business case established for the particular model, just having a fit-for-purpose agreement, whether it's formalised or non-formalised, whether it's just an MOU or an actual, separate entity that's developed. These things need to be considered on a case-by-case basis. I think risk sharing is a really crucial one, and having an equitable way of parties sharing risks, and but having equal voting rights is important. In governance, internal governance and internal communications, I think can't be emphasised enough. And of course, ultimately having very generous lead times is essential. So I think that's pretty much it. But I did want to finish on a positive note, I suppose, and a bit of a nod to the conference theme, which is I think, what is the conference theme? Something about acting, being local, acting global. I think it's always important to look to our international peers, and I'm not suggesting that there's really anywhere, apart from perhaps some of our big Queensland councils, there's maybe not really anywhere very comparable to Amsterdam in Australia, but it's always good to have, to set our aspirations high and to look to, sort of positive examples of what can be achieved. And I think Amsterdam is one of those where they have actually set a target of becoming 100% circular by 2050, and achieving and halving the use of virgin materials by 2030. And they are well on the way to achieving those targets too. And the Port of Amsterdam is a central pillar of that, I suppose, in a way. And it's owned by the municipal government, and it is a circular economy hub essentially, with energy from waste facility that powers industry there, and a sort of organics biorefinery cluster. There's a plastic hub, which is, involved in the whole life cycle of remanufacturing plastics. Lots of C&D and other recovery industries, and also lots of research and development, and I guess sort of startup incubators for circular, particularly for circular industries. So I think it's just a lovely little example of where there's a lot of public-private collaboration and a lot of investment from the local municipal government into, sort of achieving ambitious goals. So thank you. That's it.